I dedicate today's show to my late father, Thomas Clayton Clark. You see, my dad used to work night shifts. He used to work the night shift so he could put food on the table. And when he would come home from working at the Quick Trip convenience stores or the other late night jobs he had, we would sit down together and watch the San Francisco Giants baseball games, and specifically the career of Will Clark. And then my dad convinced me to play baseball. And next thing you know, I was batting like Will Clark, had the same batting stance as Will Clark, playing the same position as Will Clark, wearing the same jersey number as Will Clark, drawing pictures of Will Clark in my room and wanting to grow up to be like Will Clark. And on today's show, I'll be interviewing Will Clark. And so my dad passed away in 2016 of Lou Gehrig's disease. And so I want to dedicate this interview to my late great father, Thomas Clayton Clark. Dad, I know in heaven, you're up there with Jesus, and Jesus, if you're watching, and I know you are, if you could give my dad the ability to watch today's show, that would be great.
Get ready to enter the Thrivetime Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm a dive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio. And now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Thrive Nation, I'm so fired up. I get an opportunity today to interview a man who I literally wore 22. I wore the number 22 during my entire baseball career. I'd made myself learn to bat left-handed and play first base because of today's guest. This is the man with the sweetest swing in baseball, Will the Thrill. Welcome onto the Thrivetime Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Clay. How about yourself?
Well, brother, I'm so fired up to talk to you. I got to ask you, what age did you recognize that baseball was your passion? When did that occur for you?
You know what? I grew up in New Orleans, and my dad and I loved to hunt and fish, and I played baseball during the summertime. But I guess probably when it got into high school, it really started kicking in. I mean, everything really sort of fell into place. I started getting a lot better. I was also growing. I was maturing, and so probably high school is where the bug hit me. And then, you know, when I went to college, it just took it to the next level, and then pro ball, etc.
Now, my father was obsessed with Ted Williams. My late father was obsessed with Ted Williams, and he used to make me watch video footage of Ted Williams, and he'd have me watch footage of you. And there's a lot to the mechanics of how you hit the baseball, and there's a lot to it. When did you become a student of the game? Like, at what point did it become a thing where you were obsessively studying and trying to improve your skill set?
So I made a huge swing change in between my junior and senior year in high school. I got with a gentleman that he's local, and he was playing AAA for the Boston Red Sox, Pawtucket at the time. And he had me come out to his facility and really kind of worked with me on hitting. Closed up my stance. I was able to start using left field and the middle part of field. Before that, I was a dead pull type of guy.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's kind of where it clicked. And then when I went to Mississippi State, Coach Ron Polk was absolutely incredible. Taught us the X's and O's of the game, you know, where you need to be in this play. And hey, when you do a double cut and relay, this is where all of these guys line up. And so I took those lessons in pro ball. I actually became kind of like a captain almost. I was directing traffic out on the field. And, you know, that's kind of where the kind of, you know, my love of the game and the study of the game and all that sort of kept me going.
The speed of the game. The speed of the game. You know, when you go from high school to college and then from college to pros, talk to me about talk to us about the speed of the game. You know, when you went from college where you were All-American and you did well, and then you went into the pros. Talk to me about the speed of the game and just the velocity increase of the speed of the pitches.
Well, you know what? I mean, you know, we were facing some pretty good guys in college, you know, but the one thing that you could count on in college was 2 or 3 mistakes out over the plate that you could handle. And that is probably the biggest thing when you go into pro ball. Guys start getting it up there a little bit better. Yes, they throw in a little bit harder, but the guys on the pro side of things know exactly what they're doing. They make a lot better pitches. They don't make near as many mistakes as the guys in college. And, you have to become a better hitter in order to capitalize on those, not necessarily mistakes, but the good pitches that the pitchers are going to make. And you have to kind of spoil their day.
First at bat in the major leagues, the first time you step to the plate at the major league level. I know the story, but a lot of people don't. Tell us about that first at bat. What were you thinking when you stepped to the plate, sir?
So I had made the major league team in spring training after only having 3 months in minor leagues in high A ball the year before. I was slated to go to AAA, wound up making the major league roster. And my first at bat in the major leagues is off of Nolan Ryan in Houston, and go up there. First pitch, I got the butterflies going and all that. First pitch, he throws me a curveball, and it sort of surprised me a little bit. But the great part about that was, and it was the best thing he could have ever done for me, was it allowed me to settle down. It allowed me to get those butterflies out the way. I saw the curveball really good, and it was a strike. Next pitch, he missed up and away with a fastball, and then the 1-1 fastball was just right there. And when I hit it, I knew I caught it good, but you don't ever think a ball's going out of center field in the Houston Astrodome.
Yeah.
And it goes out, and I'm just floating around the bases, touch home plate, point to my family that was in the stands.
Yeah.
And then after we do all the customary high fives and all that, I'm sitting on the bench. And I don't know why, but in my whole career, every time something really major happened, I was able to just have a bit of a calm come over me. And I'm sitting on the bench, and I look at one of our veterans that's sitting next to me, Chili Davis, and I go, he's going to drill me next time up. He goes, oh, hell yeah. And so the next time I come to the plate, he's in his windup, and I'm like, oh, and we threw one up and in. So
now, one thing about your career that, my dad died of Lou Gehrig's a few years back. And when your father passes, you kind of reflect back on that. And my dad, we grew up really poor. So my dad worked at Quick Trip gas stations. It was a convenience store, and he would come home late. And the only time I get a chance to see him was after that night shift. He'd come home, and the San Francisco Giants, your games were on replay on SportsCenter. So for some reason, ESPN would replay the San Francisco Giants games at some bizarre time, and we would watch you. And I know you played more than just in 1989, but in 1989, you're batting .333. You are just absolutely having a great year. You're having, I believe, was a Golden Glove or close to a Gold Glove, a series it's obviously voted on, but I mean, you're doing great at first base. And you had a cast of characters that you guys teamed up together to go to the World Series. So it's you guys versus the Oakland A's in 1989. Could you tell, what was that experience like being on the Bay Area World Series? What was the energy like in Oakland and San Francisco at that time?
Well, I mean, it was absolutely incredible. We had in a pretty short period of time had turned around the San Francisco Giants organization. They the year I got drafted, 1985, I was in A-ball. They lost 100 games that year, and so then I made the team the next year. We turned the organization around a little bit. 87, we're in the playoffs. 88, we have a really good year, and then 89, we're in the World Series. On the flip side of things, Oakland A's were in the World Series in 88 against the Dodgers. They wound up losing. And then 89, boom, we're in the World Series against our Bay Area rival, who we play 8 or 9 times in spring training. So we're very familiar with each other. We go over to Oakland. They threw Mike Moore and Dave Stewart. We wound up losing the first 2 games. Both of the games were kind of a slugfest. It wasn't really a pitcher's deal. And then we come back to San Francisco for game 3, and right before introductions is when the earthquake hit. Wow. And, that was just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, never in your baseball career, especially on a pro side of things, do you have more than 1 day off. And because of the earthquake and the loss of life, what was going on in the Bay Area, all that sort of stuff, we wound up having to take 10 days off. And so when, we came back to finish up the World Series, it was kind of like spring training all over again. And the World Series for me, especially, had lost a lot of its luster because, I was more worried about the deaths in the Bay Area and stuff like that.
Now, I'm going to go rapid fire on my dad, who I believe is listening from heaven. I believe there's technology where he can just tune in here and listen from heaven. So I have some questions that my dad would want to ask. Okay. So I'm just going to throw out some names from that 89 roster. And if you could describe these people, because we watched, if you guys had 162 games, I bet you I watched 145 of them. I mean, I'm not kidding, man. Okay. So Terry Kennedy, what was Terry Kennedy like on the 1989 team?
Terry Kennedy was one of our veterans. He was a funny guy off the field. His dad, actually, Bob Kennedy, had been a part of the Giants front office for a long time. We got Terry over from, San Diego, and he really was a steadying influence behind home plate. He called a great game and did a good job in the catcher's position for us. Robbie Thompson. RT, my man, Robbie, he and I manned the right side. We came up together in 1986. He was my second baseman. One thing you never had to worry about Robbie Thompson, if there was a ground ball or a fly ball hit on that right side, he was going to catch it. And he was Mr. Dependable. He was our number 2 hole hitter. So he hit in front of me, and he did a lot of hitting and runs and sacrifice bunts, stuff like that, and really was an integral part of the team.
Now, this is a big thing for people that don't know, and I'm not attacking all professional baseball players. This is an observation that I had. Pre-steroids, it was a big deal to hit 47 home runs. Kevin Mitchell hit 47 bombs. I mean, that was unheard of in the pre-steroid era. As an example, like Mark McGwire hit 33 home runs for the A's in a pre-steroid era, and people thought that was remarkable. What was Kevin Mitchell like?
Kevin Mitchell, we call him the Boogie Bear. He was an absolute treat. Every day he'd come to the ballpark and he'd say something to make you laugh. I mean, he was that guy, loosey-goosey, but then when he went up to the plate, it was all business. Like you said, 47 homers, 120 something RBIs.
Yeah.
He was the MVP of the league. I wound up finishing second. I was in front of him all the time in the batting order. And, we'd be standing in the on-deck circle, and I'd say, hey, I'm going to get on there for you, big boy, drive me in. He goes, you got it. And he did the majority of the year. He got some unbelievable clutch hits, homers, and all that sort of stuff. And he played a pretty darn good outfield for us, too, as well.
And I don't know how much of this is accurate in my 9-year-old mind of thinking back on it, but Brett Butler, I felt like Brett Butler was a very busy guy in the batter's box. I felt like he was crafty. He was always getting on base. Somehow his batting average, I don't think, showed how often he was getting on base. What was Brett Butler like?
So Brett Butler, he was actually one of our older players. And he was our leadoff guy, little guy, could run real well. And he was a great bunter, and he practiced bunting every day. And I know in the 3 or 4 years that I played with Brett, he had over 20 bunt base hits every year. So, he was like a little pesky gnat that was at the top of our order. He'd work pitches. He'd go to 3-2 counts all the time. And for a guy like myself, a guy like Kevin Mitchell, we're standing there in the on-deck circle. We're looking at this, and we're getting a good read on the pitcher, because Brett's working him over pretty hard. Also on top of that, Brett Butler played center field, played a Gold Glove center field out there for us. And he was basically our catalyst. And, it was one of those things that he and I would talk about it. And I said it to his face many times. I said, you go, we go. And it was the truth. If he got on base, we created havoc for everybody.
Now, Don Robinson was one of the few people, and again, I'm going back to my 9-year-old mind here. He was one of the few pitchers I'd ever heard of. They would bring him in to pinch hit. Can you explain Don Robinson?
Yeah, no. So Don Robinson, we got him in a trade from Pittsburgh, and it was pretty well known that, he was a good hitter. And, not only, we used him in the bullpen, but Roger Craig also used him as a starter. And when he was a starter, I mean, he'd get 2 or 3 ABs, and he hit a bunch of clutch base hits for us. And he also led the NL in like pitchers homers a few years in a row. So, not only was he a quality pitcher,
Yeah.
as a starter and as a reliever, but then he'd help his own cause, with the bat and pinch hitting roles too.
Now, feel free to hang up on me when I ask this question. Because again, I'm 9 years old. Okay. My dad would say, Clay, my dad called me Clayton. He would say, you see that swing? I mean, I'm not kidding. He would be, you see, that's what you gotta get that stance you got. And I was like, I emulated every nuance you did. I mean, it was like, I had to watch him get going. And then my dad goes, you see what he does when he slides into second? Do you see that? And I'm going, what is that? He goes, it's a little bit dirty, but it's effective. Look how he slides into second. He creates some slides. It's a little bit dirty. Now, my dad played in the Little League World Series in 1965, and he could hurl some heat. And he was, my dad he was going to be very, very good, hurt his arm, win a different career, different career path. But he was very good at baseball, and he would make me watch highlights of you sliding. Can you please explain your theory towards sliding into second base?
So my theory on sliding, and you got to remember, it was a little different rules back then. As long as the rule was, as long as you could touch second base with a hand or with a foot or whatever, you were legitimately good. And so my theory on sliding was, if I got to run 90 feet, somebody's going to get hit. And I didn't like to run too much. So, and on top of that, if you go in there and you make contact with the second baseman or the shortstop, it's going to be a lot tougher for them to complete the double play. And so, nowadays I sit there and I watch the guys, they'll run down a second and they'll peel off, get out the way. And the second baseman's like, thank you. And it just make a great throw to first base. For us back then, it was more about not letting the double play be completed. And, also when you go in and you go in hard, all of a sudden that word gets around the league. Hey, look, this guy's coming in here to break up a double play. We need to get the ball and get rid of it. Otherwise he's going to be on top of us. And that was kind of my theory on sliding.
Now, my dad he would zoom in and he'd watch and he'd do, this is all before you had picture in picture. This is, 1989. But my dad would say, you see what Will's doing there? And I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. He seems to be playing first base. He's like, he's active. He's engaged. Look at him. He looks pissed. He looks focused. He's like, can you explain the mindset that you had? Because again, my dad would go, you see that when you're playing first base, you need to be doing that. I go, what's he doing? He's focused. He's engaged. He seems pissed. Yeah. Do that. Can you explain what you were doing?
So in the field, and then this is the one thing that our infield instructor, his name was Bob Lillis. Bob told me, he goes, you're going to have your 0 for 3s and your 0 for 4s. He said, but you can't have an 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 out in the field. We need to help the pitchers, win the ball game. And it was the truth. I mean, no matter what happened at the plate, you still had to field the ball, field it clean, all that. And so, what we did was we took the mindset of being aggressive. So if you ever had in the back of your brain, oh, I should stay back on this ball or I should charge it, we always charged everything. And it wound up being really good because you actually, as a defensive player, you play the ball and the ball doesn't play you, and you create actually a good hop for yourself. And so, it was just like, being aggressive in the batter's box is being aggressive out on the field. And, myself, Robbie Thompson, we both talked about it a lot. And on top of that, when we were in the field, we were talking back and forth. So Robbie, especially with a left-handed hitter up, he would go, hey, Will, hey, Tutu, hey, Double Deuce, whatever. And he would give me a heads up that a breaking ball's coming so that, those are the ones that the left-hander is going to roll over, to first base or second base. And so both of us were really aggressive that way. And another thing too, is with the communication, if he ever moved, so if he has to play, double play depth or whatever he has to do, I knew that. And I knew I had to cover more ground on my side of the diamond.
No, I gotta confess to you here. This is baseball died for me when you retired, for me, because it was like, I'm not kidding. You had a different way you played. You were aggressive, you were focused, you weren't screwing around. You weren't screwing around. You were not screwing around. It was like the Knicks versus the Bulls back in the day. You know, it's like if Jordan was going to go into the lane and try to do a dunk or make a layup, they're going to hit him. They're going to Jordan versus the Bulls versus the Pistons. Jordan takes the ball to the hole, and guess what? He's going to get hit by Lambeer. They're going to blow the whistle, and then guess what? Isaiah Thomas is going to hit him too. And the guys didn't want to talk to each other before the game. They weren't getting like selfies before the game. They were pissed. You got the feeling that Isaiah Thomas and Jordan were pissed, and I loved it. And but then I'm not going to attack baseball. I know that's what you do for a living now, but it became kind of softball for me when you and your ilk retired. How did you know that it was time for you to retire? Because you came back on the Cardinals, and I'm going, he's got 42 RBIs. He's doing great. I saw you on the Rangers, and I'm like, he's got it. I was wanting you to play forever. How did you know it was time to be done?
So I was in Baltimore, and it was the last year of my contract. And during the off season, our son, who was a little bit autistic, we saw a major change in him during the off season. And my wife and I both talked about it. And I said, this is probably going to be it, because, you know, I want to be home for him and support him. And so, you know, I go into Baltimore, started off a little slow, but then I picked up the pace a little bit. And I get traded to St. Louis. And when I got traded to St. Louis, like you said, I kind of went off. I mean, I hit 350 with like 15 homers and 50 RBIs and 55 games or something like that. And we wound up making the playoffs. A homer in my last at bat in the playoffs. And that offseason, the Cardinals said they want to sign me back, but McGuire was having surgery. And so he was going to come back. So I'd have to be either an outfielder or a utility guy. And I was like, you know, that's the old dog, new tricks thing. And so I decided, you know, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out on top. I had 15 years in. I did pretty much everything except win a World Series that you could do, you know, on the baseball field. And I said, you know, it's time. So I did that.
Now your jersey.
Wait a second, I lost you. Wait, I lost you. I don't know what happened here.
Can you see me now?
No, I don't. Hang on.
Okay. I can see you.
All right, here we go. Boom, I got you back.
Okay. Now I'll edit it out.
All right.
Too. Now you
okay.
Your number finally got retired, I believe. Your number finally was retired.
Yes.
San Francisco Giants. You're not saying this, but I'm going to say this, and then you can correct me. Okay. You should be in the Hall of Fame, and it's abundantly clear, and this isn't a backhanded compliment, it's abundantly clear that you weren't doing roids. Every time you got to bat, I didn't see, here comes Wheel Clock to pump it up, he's going to hit the baseball, you know, but you look at a lot of these guys, and I'm not going to mention their names, I'm just going to hint at who they are. There was a guy who came up through the Tulsa Drillers minor league baseball system who never hit home runs. And he went to the pros and never hit home runs. Next thing you know, it's, can he hit to 50 home runs? You know, and it's just, so there was a whole like steroid. And I believe if you would have got on the bulk enhancers and you went to pump the top, you probably would have been hitting 45 home runs every year because you always made solid contact.
Yeah. And
all you had to do, if you extend the length at which you drive the ball, you would have hit 15% more home runs, et cetera, et cetera. So you were a pre-steroid baseball player competing with guys who were starting to flirt with roids, okay? Yeah. And you maintained a 300-plus average. You had a ridiculous on-base percentage. You got it done in the field. People forget that you were a very good actual first baseman. You were a general on the field. What are your thoughts on the Hall of Fame?
So that question that you have there is kind of two-parted. You know, hey, look, you know, the steroids were there, and you knew they were there. You knew who was doing it because, you know, like you said, you know, a guy would hit 10, 12 homers, and the next year he hit 45. It's like, whoa, wait a second. You just don't learn how to hit a homer overnight. Yeah. So that's first off. Second off, my dad always told me, he said, don't cheat. He says, outthink and outwork the other guy. And that was how I grew up. That's how I, you know, patterned my whole game. So for me personally, that was never an issue. Nobody would have ever come to me, because if they would have come to me, we'd have had a fist fight right then and there. So that's first off. Second off, the Hall of Fame stuff. You know, I did not get into this sport, to be a Hall of Famer. I got into this sport because I love the competition.
Mm.
I love hey, the ball's in flight. You got to catch it dead center, and you got to beat, 8 guys that are running around out there trying to catch it. And so, that's what I did, for my career. If the Hall of Fame comes, great. But if not, having my number retired by the San Francisco Giants this last year and having my number up there next to number 24, Willie Mays, who's the greatest player that ever played the game.
Come on now.
That is my Hall of Fame. And, for me personally, if the Hall of Fame comes, great. I'll thoroughly enjoy it. But if not, I can look back on my career, say I did it the right way, and my number's retired in San Francisco.
And I'll tell you this, I got into baseball because my dad and because of you. So I want you in the Hall of Fame for my own selfish benefit, because I feel like you were one of the best. Now today, obviously you're doing other great things today. You're a family man. You're heavily involved in the community. Yep. Tell us what you're doing right now. What is your current gig? What are you doing right now?
So I am the special hitting instructor for the San Francisco Giants. So not only do I see the major league team at least once a month, but I also see all of our minor league affiliates, and I write reports and send it back saying, hey, look, this guy, he's really good at this, but he has a little problems with this. And so kind of gives, not only the front office, but also the coaching staff, a little bit of idea what these guys need to work on and stuff like that. So that's really a very important part of my life. Another thing too is because I'm not full-time, I get a chance to spend a lot of time with my son, my wife, my daughter, and become, a family man, and yet at the same time, still keep my hand in the sport that I love so much.
Final 5 minutes here for final questions for you. The average Major League Baseball player today is making $4.38 million. That's the publicized average. And I'm not going to talk about how much money you made. All I'm saying is you and Kirby Puckett were some of the first guys to make some decent contracts. And you guys were the best. I mean, you guys were the first kind of guys to break through certain contractual barriers. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I always watched that. Working with today's, athletes, a lot of these guys are making $4.38 million a year. Has money changed at all the game dynamic? Is the game different? Is the money?
Oh yeah, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, the money component has definitely changed the game. I mean, when I got into the sport, there was like $2 million players. It was Gary Carter and I think Ozzie Smith. And then about 1989, I became the first $4 million player, and then within probably another year or two after that, the contracts were at like $8 million. So, I got in the sport and kind of caught the elevator ride going up. So that was really good from that standpoint. But now the money that is involved in the sport and, the way that the ownership, throws it kind of around. I mean, these guys got job security for the most part. And their job security would have got me sent to AAA. If you hit 240 or 250 back in my day, you were gone. See you later.
Wow.
Now these guys, now you got everyday guys. I just looked at, last night I watched the Seattle Mariners play, and they got a bunch of guys hitting 20 homers and stuff like that, but they had 201, 148, 178 was in their starting lineup, and I'm like, what? You're below 200 and you got a starting job in the major leagues? Wow. So I don't get it. Another thing too, you mentioned it a little bit ago.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that Al Rosen, who was my general manager, he flat out came out and told me, he said, I pay you for 2 things. He said, I pay you to drive in more runs than the other guy and touch home plate more than the other guy. I said, yes, sir. And so in a 3-year stretch from 87, 88, 89, they call them walk-off hits or, and walk-off homers and all that, and game-winning RBIs and all that. I had 36 of those in 3 years. And so, now these guys, you see them take their jerseys and rip it off, and then they get a Gatorade shower and all that. And I'm like, we just expected to do that back then. It was just like who
Oh,
we were, we
oh,
wanted to be the man that ended the game.
that's
And,
why.
now that it's like a circus out there sometimes.
Well, final three questions for you. Just the craziest pitcher you ever had to bat against. I mean, the guy that just was crazy. I mean, you talk about Eckersley just throwing the ball 100 miles an hour, wild Nolan Ryan. I mean, you faced the greats. What was just the craziest pitcher that now that you're retired, you can say he did some fear?
So I mean, you being in the middle of the lineup and playing every day like we did, you face everybody. You face everybody's number one, number two, number three, number four, number five. I mean, you face them all.
Yeah.
And they were all truly tough to face. They were all professionals in their own right. But the guy who was just for a lack of a better term, a freak show out there was Pascual Perez. I mean, telling what he was on when he took the mound, and he'd throw the ball in between his legs over to first base, and he'd jump around on the mound. I mean, it was a freak show. And so, I was not really big on, hitting homer and stand there watching it, unless it was just a game winning upper tank shot or something like that. But I know I caught him in Candlestick on one of those. It was a tough night, and I caught him in about the seventh inning to put us up, and I sat there and watched it till it hit the stands. And then I ran around the bases, and the whole time I was running around the bases, I was screaming at him. So, so that would be the guy, would be Pascual Perez.
Okay, final two questions. What size bat did you use? What ounce bat? What size bat were you using back in the day?
So, back then we used ash, and in order to get a good quality wood in ash, you had to go up in weight a little bit.
Yeah.
So like in college, I swung a 34 and a half, 32 and a half. Mm-hmm. And so when I got into pro ball, I bumped that up a little bit. So I was swinging a 35, 33, C271, which wasn't a big barrel head. It was sort of a smaller barrel head. And when I got up there and was swinging, like I said, 33 ounces, I started getting some steel. I mean, you would hit it, you'd hit a baseball, and it sounded like you hit it with a 2x4, man. It was an unbelievable, just wow sound. And, the ball kind of jumped off the bat.
Did you have my final question for you? Did you have like a pregame ritual or a thought, a thing you would say to yourself when you were in the batter's box? Anything you would kind of do mentally that people couldn't see that you could share?
Well, one of the things that happened was the advent of like videotape and all that came in 1987. And Tony Gwynn and I were really good friends. And so he started watching a lot of videotape, and he was telling me about it. So then I started watching a lot of videotape. So I'd get to the ballpark at about 1:30 in the afternoon. I'd watch videotape on the guy that I was facing that night and try to get, a game plan as to what side of the plate he went to, if he had his butt in a ringer, what pitch did he go to, these kind of things. I would then go into the batting cage and I'd work on it. Then we'd take batting practice on the field and I'd work on it some more. And then for the game, I just kind of paid attention to the game. If he had those pitches working that I was looking for, I stuck with the game plan. If he did not have those pitches working, then I reformulated a new game plan.
Now, Will, if people want to buy, mainly me, if people want to buy a custom jersey, a signed jersey, where can they go to buy signed stuff from you? Are you selling memorabilia these days? Mainly me. I want to know.
Yeah. The San Francisco Giants, they have me sign memorabilia all the time. I know I signed a bunch of baseballs that had my retirement logo on the baseballs. They actually use those baseballs in the game too. So I signed a bunch of those baseballs. I've definitely signed jerseys.
Do they sell those on the San Francisco Giants website?
Yes, on the Giants website. And then also, if you go to Major League Baseball alumni, I sign a bunch of jerseys for those guys. So Major League Baseball alumni has a lot of Will Clark signed jerseys.
Brother, this interview was the highlight of my decade. The highlight of seriously, I interview so many great people on this show. We've had Wolfgang Puck and John Maxwell and all these big names, but I just want you to know this was my favorite interview I've ever done, and I really appreciate you for carving out time. It's been an honor to have you. Thank you.
Well, Clay, I thoroughly enjoyed it. You were a true pro with the questions and all that, and thank you for being a fan, and your dad, rest in heaven, for being a fan for so long. I really appreciate it. I know it was tough on you guys watching the games out there in Candlestick so late and at night, but thoroughly enjoyed doing the interview with you, and we'll do it in the future if you want to do it again.
Absolutely, brother. I'd be honored. Take care. Have a great day. Will the Thrill.
All right. You take care, Clay. Have a great one.
All right, Dad. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview, and I just want to thank you for being an awesome dad. And the video that you recorded for me before you died has always been something I go back to, and I thought I would share with everybody, because if you're out there today and you want to leave your kids a great gift, my dad, when he got sick with Lou Gehrig's disease, he decided to sit down and record me a video as kind of a word of encouragement that I could go back and watch every time that I miss him, which is every day.
Well, Clayton, not Clay, Clayton. You will always be Clayton to me. You're named after your grandfather. Well, actually, we're all named after your grandfather. He's Thomas Clayton Clark Sr. I'm Thomas Clayton Clark Jr. And I didn't want somebody calling you Trey, so you're Clayton Thomas Clark. Well, son, I'm really proud of you. You overcame stammering. Now you speak for a living. That's amazing. You couldn't get 2 words together at one time. And now, can't shut you up. You're one of those. But I'm exceptionally proud of you, son. And I just ask you, keep going, keep focused. And when you called me that day and said you promise to be a follower of Christ all your life, that meant everything to me. So I'm just praying a blessing on you, that you'll continue to be successful in your business, in your family, and number one, in service to your Lord. Go get him, Tiger. Okay, one last thing, and I would like to say the most important thing. We can't begin to express the amount of thanks and gratitude we have for all the prayer and all the support, physically, spiritually, every way possible. We had some people on Facebook that we knew. It's blown up. It's people beyond what I can count. The people in the church, and the prayers and the support they've offered us. Even this chair, which is a lift chair, which helps me to get up, was just given to me last night. How can you thank somebody for those things? It's unbelievable. Well, I know there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are lifting me up in prayer. And I know that God answers prayer. And my desire is to be healed in this life and have a normal life. But the main thing that I want you to pray for is that no one can go without hearing the message of Jesus and his saving power and his love. That's the number one thing that we want out there. Focus your prayers on that, and please continue to pray for my healing. Thank you so much. Mary and I love you all. Thank you.